Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming and welcome to the school board meeting of the Greater Albany Public Schools. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you very much. I'll just let everyone know we did meet in an executive session earlier this evening under ORS 192.6660 to conduct deliberations with personnel designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. And I will hear a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, before I approve the agenda, I would also like to talk a little bit about the executive session in so much as that we had one. No decisions were made in executive session consistent with state law. However, as a result of that executive session, I would like to nominate Brad Wilson to serve on the district negotiating team along with board member Michael Thompson.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, gentlemen.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Nyquist.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you very much. Mr. Cervantes,
Yes, sir.
good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to be sharing my screen here to give you all a brief summary about federal holiday that's observed today, Juneteenth, to give some background on what it is, why we celebrate it, and some future considerations for the board. Is that visible? I'm just not sure if that's visible. Is that visible? Yes, I did. I'm in.
It's not to me visible,
Say again? It's not visible to you. Okay.
not visible.
I am in. Let me see.
I don't know if it is to you.
End. I will end and rejoin. Leave meeting. Escape.
I don't see it on the TV either, and I think the projector's just projecting the TV, so.
Okay.
I have it on our computer.
It's in board book for everybody, but I think projecting it to the screen so that folks at home can see that as well.
Might be asleep.
It might be asleep.
Okay.
If you want to hold on just a second, Mr. Cervantes, we can
Yep.
we can skip to the next agenda item and then come right back.
That's fine.
If board, please do so. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, comments from the public, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two public comments tonight. I do want to say the entire text is submitted to, for public comment, it's provided to the board and submitted for public record, and I know the board reads those. I'd summarize two public comments tonight. I will tell you that the two commenters each make nearly identical points. In fact, they do make identical points. Public comment number one, the writer makes these 3 points. Disappointment, no Pride Month proclamation has been adopted by the board. Disappointment in public, in-person public comments are not accepted at board meetings. And the commenter says they do not want the district to add a second SRO to our schools. Those are the exact same 3 points that are made in public comment number two.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And if we want to go into the calendar, gentlemen, it is G1. Review and discuss the 2022-2023 board meeting calendar, planning meeting determined by July after the vote of the chair and vice chair. I've talked with the superintendent, and my recommendation for meetings next year, the big recommendation I made was to move them from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It actually supports our staff a little easier. I know it supports the board easier, but it still gives the public time to get off from work and make it to the meeting if they would like to do so. Second recommendation would be our traveling meetings and moving them to quarterly and doing them at the middle schools. That way we touch all four corners of our district. And then I'd be open to hear input.
On the quarterly, because summertime probably wouldn't work well, are we gonna just have 4 meetings then during the school year at the schools? Is that what you have in intentioned? Or did you want it in equal quarters and we'd have one in the summertime?
I think one in the summertime would still be of value.
I was thinking about the air conditioning personally, but
And that's just up for
that's-
thought.
yeah, I was just curious.
I'd like to get your guys' opinion, though, on the listening sessions, what we kind of want to look for as far as next year.
I am a huge fan of listening sessions. I think they've been very beneficial. There's been a lot of ideas shared. We can get into topics in depth. I've learned a lot of concerns and then being able to bring that back and some changes were made as being made aware of these problems. So I like our schedule that we have now and the frequency. I don't think it's overwhelming. I'd like to keep it similar.
I just think we've gotten better at talking about the ones that only 2 of us at a time. So there's a bunch that I miss, there's a bunch that you all miss, and we're getting better, but that's the piece that's missing. There's things I would like to learn about, and I think we need to learn about as a group. That's part of being a board. We are a board that only can do anything when we meet. We have no powers. It is in the policy. We have no powers outside of, and I think we get away from that a little bit. The listening part is fine. The back and forth gets into, here's what I want, here's what the person next to me wants, but I have no idea what the 3 think that aren't there. And so like I said, we've gotten better, so I just would continue to get better at rehashing what was said at those meetings, the ones that I'm not there.
I do appreciate the summarization that the superintendent brings afterwards.
I like the listening sessions because being someone who came and spoke to the board when they were taking public comment, I didn't like the fact that I got to make my comment and then I was basically ignored, and didn't have any follow-up. So I like the idea of the listening session because there's 2 people there, 2 board members, the leadership in the district, and we're able to get into a little bit more of the details and track that down a little bit more. But that's me. I'm one of the problems with public comment right now, just like we're having with, the fact that we had to skip, the fact that internally we couldn't share what Javier was trying to share, is the electronic version of it. How do we get someone to call in? If we get that figured out, I think that makes it a lot easier. But I think if we're taking public comment and there's people trying to do that public comment from all over the country, like is the rules now, that'll be very tough and that'll make it very haphazard to how that comment is taken.
So I think a lot. I'll try not to go on very long. One is I think, I'll just say this up front, the most effective conversationalist and most effective public meetings, if you will, that I've been to, that I've seen, has been this guy named Ron Wyden, holds them, one in every county every year for a long, long time. And they're interactive. A lot of times he goes to schools as well. And so it's an exchange, and generally people leave those meetings knowing more about a specific subject than when they came, and that's all sides. And so I think that with listening sessions, we did a little bit of that. I think at times it turned into a debate. And I don't know that a debate is okay as long as school board members in the community are willing to consider other thoughts, and it's it's a win-win. And so however we have a dialogue, I think that's important to have. I think that the way that we're doing public comment serves no useful purpose. I've yet, and I'm sure there's been some, and I just can't remember them, but I'm hard-pressed to recall that a public comment at the beginning of the board meeting made me smarter about a specific topic on the agenda. It seems more like public political comment. And many times, the focus of that is not kids and classrooms and learning. So I'm not necessarily suggesting changing any of that today, just my observations about that. And then the other thing is, I don't know how we can do it. I like going to the schools. I think, it's just my perception, that parents who have kids in specific schools are more likely to come to that school if they have a question or want to engage the board than coming to the district office. And so, and I say that knowing that there's an additional resource put into having those meetings at schools instead of at the district office. And I don't know how much work that is. I don't know what we're not doing because we're doing that. It seems like we try to take furniture and things, and we wouldn't necessarily need to do that. We've all sat at lunch tables. We could sit at lunch tables again. So those are my observations. I think that if you look at school board meetings in other parts of the state and around the country, I'm glad to not be them, and that we attempt to conduct the public's business in a business-like manner, and we in the community, everybody involved, attempt to have a thoughtful, civilized conversation about the issues facing us. So overall, I think we've done pretty good. And I would hate to abandon any of those tenets that we had and the goals we had when we started this. And I'll leave the details to the rest of you.
Okay, so let's kind of build this out. I just kind of want to get your feelers where you're at on 6 o'clock.
I think I'm good with 6.
I'm good with whatever the group thinks. I think no matter what we do, we're going to have those that aren't happy with whatever time. You know, I've heard some that say 7's better. They can get home from work and eat and then come to these. And then I've heard some that say, hey, I'd rather just come from work. So, I mean, we're going to hit some and some we're not.
And then, we're comfortable with the Monday standard.
Yeah.
The specific dates look pretty good to me on the 22 to 23 calendar that Chris has done a good job outlining for us. So I'd like to get the date and time approved, and then work on the location and listening sessions in the future. Unless we want to do it tonight.
So, no, that's okay. So I guess my question is, would you do a listening session or a community meeting on separate nights from the school board meetings?
As sometimes there would.
Because if you're going to start at 6,
Right.
you're doing those from 5 to 6:30, and I'm okay with that. We should just, I want that to be a conscious decision going in, and that we don't just
terminate.
lose those other meetings and interactions we're having with the public.
And I think it's important to have some on the same nights as a board meeting, and then some nights maybe separate. The last couple listening sessions I've gone to, they've finished 35, 40 minutes early. I've been lucky.
Mine have all gone long.
Gone long.
So if you had the same model, your listening session would be like from 4 to 5:30? I don't know that hits the mark. So I would suggest, I'm okay with a 6 o'clock meeting, but just know that we're going to have some type of 1 or 2 member board community meeting outside of that.
So
separate from that.
if we're trying to do one a quarter listening session, why don't we just make the listening session board meetings at 7 and the rest at 6?
Oh, actually, the quarter thing, I was talking about traveling.
Oh,
I believe listening sessions are more important or should be more frequent than once a quarter. I was talking about traveling as a school board to different locations. And that's just feedback I've got about how it's hard to set up. We are out to bid right now for a new AV system, so it will improve communications in this room. But I don't think that system is transportable. No.
Right.
So we could be here for a long time discussing this tonight.
Yeah.
I think you've got some basic tenets. Somebody, I don't know who, needs to come up with a proposal in writing for us at the next board meeting,
Okay.
and we can approve it or mark it up, would be my suggestion.
So I do think the idea of adopting the dates that are on the calendar would be great if you all could do that tonight, and then we could mark up the rest of that after that. So if you look on the, in the agenda, you'll see that there's a calendar with dates that are set. They're the dates that I heard Chair Aganagua say he thought looked good.
I'd like to make a motion, we move to adopt the school board dates marked in yellow on the calendar as presented, and we'll leave the rest of the item discussions for a later meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, I give the floor back to you, sir.
All right, thank you. Sorry for the snafu there. I had 2 links apparently, and I picked the wrong one. So as you can see, I'm not a very good gambler if I were going to go to roulette or something like that. So I'm going to talk about Juneteenth here for you all to give you an idea what it is, why we celebrate it, and some questions for this particular body to consider in the future, or one question for you all to consider in the future. So President Abraham Lincoln issued an Emancipation Proclamation January 1 of 1863. 4 years later, the Civil War ended in April 19th, 1865. More than 2 years after President Lincoln's signed the Emancipation Proclamation, enslaved Americans in Galveston, Texas, finally received the word that they were free from bondage. Formerly enslaved Black Americans came to commemorate June 19th or Juneteenth with celebrations across the country and building in new traditions for this holiday. Juneteenth is one more opportunity and symbolic steps in affording an opportunity to understand our complex history as it relates to race and incremental move to reconciliation. Although the Civil War concluded, ending 246 years of slavery, the United States entered a new era of Jim Crow segregation, as you can see in that diagram there. In 1865 to in 1954, 89 years, or 365 years of history. Juneteenth ought to be a significant holiday for every single one of us to acknowledge. Juneteenth is a day that should be recognized by all Americans. Juneteenth is a day of profound weight and power. In 2021, Governor Kate Brown also commemorated the day as a holiday, for a state holiday. So it is both a federal and state holiday for us to commemorate, and it was passed last year. So why we celebrate this particular holiday is to commemorate Juneteenth, is to remember the enduring legacy of struggle for dignity and the strength and the spirit of human determination. The question for this group that I'd like for you all to consider moving forward, as we're just talking about calendars, is if Juneteenth is a federal and state holiday, how does GAPS recognize it? As you probably know, you didn't get any mail today. There are many establishments, federal and state establishments, that have been closed today. We don't have school today because it's summer break, But this might be one of those times where we contemplate how we actually recognize the day for our employees here in GAPS. Just wanted to give you a brief summary of what Juneteenth is. You will have this available, obviously, in your board packet, and we have also placed this in our Facebook wall and Instagram feeds as well. Do you have any questions?
So, Mr. Chair, just one of the comments I would have is, we have this meeting tonight on Juneteenth, and it made me go back and look at the school board calendar meeting that we just adopted to see, well, are we having a meeting on Juneteenth next year? We're not, by the way, so that's good. But it is one of those things that makes me go, oh, wait a second, this is something for us to check, and I want to make sure that, because it's a holiday and for what it represents, that we take a look at that and we think about that over time, what it means to our employees, what it means in our community and to people in our state, but also just checking our calendar and making sure that we acknowledge that and have it right. And I'm certain that at some point in time, there'll at least be a question asked about the status as far as work is concerned in the district. I do know that one of the requirements is that students cannot go to school on a state holiday like this, and so we did have some summer school set up for today, and just South Albany, I think, was the one that was going to get started early, and so we didn't do that because we can't do that, and we shouldn't do it, and so it's just those kinds of things, recognizing it, and make sure we keep track of it, and also understanding its meaning so that we give it the power that it deserves.
I appreciate it. And it is actually interesting to be here on the celebration day and get a fabulous presentation by Executive Director Cervantes. And we're not out barbecuing or mowing our lawns right now. We're actually learning and appreciating this presentation. So thank you, sir.
So one of the tenets of this board over the past year is we just follow the law. We don't veer from that. We don't take the scenic route. And Juneteenth is a federal and a state holiday. It seems to me that having the district recognize that as a holiday would be consistent with the federal and state holiday and give the day the honor that it deserves. And that would be important to many, many people in our district. So my question is this. We negotiate contracts, we do things, and we have X number of holidays. Is there a way that we can honor Juneteenth without undermining all of our existing contracts and making that work? Is there another day that we're honoring as a holiday, or we're giving a paid day off that isn't maybe necessary or appropriate?
Right. Well, I know that we're in contract negotiations right now, language negotiations with our licensed staff. I think there's an opportunity there for us to ask that question of our licensed employees, and then also have a similar conversation next spring with our classified employees and start to embed that into our contract language. So yes, there's opportunity to do that, and we can bring that up now.
Thank you.
Any further? All right. Mr. Saxton, would you mind coming front and center, please? And our friends from APD, would like to invite them to the front.
There's front and center.
You have to post there,
It's
Superintendent.
not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Board, thank you very much for allowing me some time tonight. It's been a challenging year. You and I have both have way more gray hair than we did this time last year. But I would be remiss if we didn't take the time to formally thank Rob as he exits as the interim superintendent. I don't think when you accepted this, you had any idea what it would be like to be superintendent in the current environment. It's about this much different than being a police chief in the current environment. So, but I appreciate your leadership, your relationship, your partnership. We embarked last summer with a lot of challenges in the city, a lot of challenges in the world, and you immediately embraced everything we had to do. I also have to thank you to Javier, who also was engaged in these conversations about what is our presence in your school district look like. And you listen to us and open your doors to us. And I want to make sure that you always remember us as you depart into retirement number 2. And enjoy this. I'm sure it'll go somewhere well behind all your plaques and degrees and stuff. But this actually has the chief's coin, which is a rare commodity. And I don't know if you realize that we've had some very late night phone calls about threats and how to navigate them and different challenges. And he was very good about taking advice and counsel and vice versa. I don't think we would have had the success we did this year without you and your staff and the support that we have. I know that our presence isn't welcome by all, but I think with time that we can build that relationship, and you open that door for us, and I want to thank you for that.
That's cheap.
What I am.
Taze would fix that.
Give it to him at the end.
Couple things. You guys don't get to go away. First of all, I want to correct the chief. I haven't corrected her very many times this year, but I have fewer gray hairs than I did when I got here because I just have fewer altogether. But maybe more gray on a percentage basis. The math teacher in me can't help but try to be accurate when we start talking about numbers and hairs. At any rate, thank you very much. This won't go behind other things. It will go front and center, and I really appreciate it. It is a really interesting time in the world, and it is true. I probably didn't really have an idea of everything that I was getting myself into when I came, thank goodness. And probably don't know if I would have done it if I had, although I might have anyway, because I don't always have great common sense. But part of there's lots of different learnings that we have, and part of my really big learnings this year is just how important the relationships are that we have. And when things get really tough, I mean, no matter what it happens to be, right? Whether it's, I don't know, on any team that I've ever been on, or in, my familial relationships, or in anything that I have to do in a job, the kind of relationships that we have and how we treat those, and how we treat the people that we're in them with is super important. And there's a ton of times when things are hard, and there's a lot of question about what's right or what's wrong, or what certain individuals have to think. But if we keep our relationships strong and our communication open, I think we can get so much further working in partnership and trying to figure out how to make that happen. And the APD and chief and, all parts of that, Curtis and Brad, just did a really good job of that this year, and we appreciate it so much. And I will say, there were times this year when I think one time I was on the phone with the chief until midnight, and basically said, we're gonna have to make a decision by, 1:30, or whatever it happens to be, and if we can't figure out what's happening here, we're gonna cancel school tomorrow, right? And just hanging in there and trying to figure out sort of where this all stood. And it gave me a strong sense of when do we want people? And sometimes we just want them when we need them, right? And I don't think it gets to be that way. I think it's got to be when you need them and before you need them. And y'all have been there for us that way, and I just really appreciate it. So thanks again so much, and this means a great deal to me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Officer Bell. Appreciate it. We will move into G2 as our,
wait.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Brad.
And Brad, sorry. Gotcha. Move into our board roles as chair and vice chairs. This is a discussion. We'll be voting at our next July meeting for new positions. And attached, you see kind of the roles and responsibilities of both. Does anyone have any questions on this? Perfect. And we'll move into our superintendent report.
Thank you. I thought I'd keep it fairly simple and on point tonight. I've talked about this a couple of different times, but I thought it would be important for me to look at the goals that I set at the beginning of the year this year. And just quickly, one of them was, I had 8 goals. One of them was to work with the school board so that they can be their very best. So the nuts and bolts of meetings, enhance understanding of education in our district systems, and broaden commitments to all students, especially BIPOC students. The second one was put the district in the best position to attract, hire, and retain a quality superintendent to lead the district in the long term. Third was position the new superintendent for success. Fourth was strengthen the commitment and understanding of equity and equitable outcomes for district students. Fifth was to ensure district financial stability. Sixth was to strengthen relationships with other organizations in the broader Albany community. Seventh was reduce the side noise for district educators, improve the focus on student learning. And 8 was to deliver a safe environment that sets the conditions for all educators to do their best work. None of those are perfectly achieved. All of them, I think, are to a degree that I'm satisfied with as a person who set out to try to do these things in earnest this year. And when I look at the list, as is typical, the role that I played in this was one, hopefully, of leadership, and a lot of the work that gets accomplished is by other people. I look at things like, focus on student achievement and learning, and I know that Lisa, that's in her bailiwick, and she does a really nice job of that work, focusing on that. I look at position the new superintendent for success, and I think about the work that Chris has done as we went through the process this year to try to find a great superintendent, and how diligent she was in making sure that the process that we followed was the right one. Strengthening the commitment and understanding of equity and equitable outcomes for our students, and Javier Cervantes, and the work that he has taken on in a really strong role with that. Finding district financial stability and Case and the role that he plays in that, and that he will play in that over the long term. Reducing side noise for district educators and the work that our HR department plays in that role, and Heather Huzefka, who works on that constantly. And so superintendents put lots of goals on pieces of paper, and then they ask other people to carry those out. And they also ask that a board carries those things out so that it's possible. And really, all the people who are sitting up here tonight, those goals don't get accomplished without all of you all. And so I appreciate the way that people leaned in this year, and that it feels like all of those things move forward in a nice way. And I can sit here and claim that they were accomplished, and that they were accomplished by a team, which is the only way that you ever really get something done that's important anyway. So just wanted to point that out. And I think I had one other thing to say, if I can find it in my notes here. Yes, I wanted to repeat, because I think it's important that something that was stated at our last board meeting, and I think is important for us to say again because it has an impact on our long-term successes, and that would be that we are going to be hiring staff that are not vaccinated, and we are in the process actually of doing that right now. And once those staff are hired, then we'll work through them and work with them and figure out which 3 of the criteria that they would meet, whether it would be that they are vaccinated, they're unvaccinated, but have a religious exception, or a exception based on some health status. And so, it's really important for us to continue to announce that. I have to appreciate Michelle Steinhebel, who wrote a story about that. It went above the fold in the Democrat Herald, which is really great advertising, earned communication that went out there. And so I appreciate the work that happened there. And then it was picked up by a couple TV stations and some radio stations as well. But we can't say it often enough. And for anybody who's out there that's listening, or even if you're not, we need bus drivers. We need substitutes. And we want to work you through the process so that you can come be a successful contributor to the kids in this district. And I know I had a couple people who came up to me and said, if you'll do this, I'll come drive bus. I'm holding you to it. So I'm going to look at the list here pretty soon if you're one of those people who said that. And so that's a decision that our new superintendent leaned in on and made, and it's one that I want to reemphasize. We'll have the same expectations with volunteers. We'll start that at a point in August, and we'll get out communication about that as we move forward. But I want to make sure that people know that so that we can get those things done. And with that, I would conclude. If there's any other comments that, or any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, sir. And we'll move into board liaison reports.
I don't have any liaison reports, but, since everyone else is thanking the interim superintendent, I think I should get a chance to as well. You listed your goals and you fulfilled them well and you acknowledged your team, but I just want to thank you for putting some of those goals down. There was things you could have easily punted to the next superintendent, and you didn't. Especially, I mentioned at last meeting, the strategic plan, picking up that work and continuing it turned out well, and I'm super happy. I don't think you ever planned on dealing with a historic building, but you took that on, and I'm super happy how that turned out. And I think you set that up for a future of preserving that building, frankly. And you were a super help, and we kind of knew this going in, but you really were a super help with the search for a new superintendent. So I just want to thank you. Everyone else is thank you. I want to thank you too.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate
And I've learned, lastly, I learned in our talks, I learned so much about how the K through 12 system works in Oregon, and I think I'll take that as I move on. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to publicly thank Rob. You came into a hard situation and you did great things. And I appreciate the fact that you're giving it to your staff, because that's where it should be. And I look forward to hopefully having you on my speed dial as a mentor in the future.
Thanks, Pete.
I had to write mine down. So, Rob, I wanted to take a moment to thank you. Your leadership at GAPS was exactly what was needed to reverse the direction the district was headed. Due to your superior leadership, all of my first-year goals were achieved. The divisive policies and practices of the past administration have been systematically returned to a state of normalcy. Parents are no longer marching and criticizing the district, and calm has returned to the board meetings. Andy Gardner is standing by to take over as superintendent, and I have no doubt he will serve the district well. All of this is due to your superior leadership and calm demeanor. Perhaps the biggest surprise from this past year is how much I have personally learned from your friendship and leadership style. Working and interacting with you has made me a better communicator and a more patient listener. As I continue with my work on the board and throughout life, I will take this with me and be forever grateful. Without doubt, the personal interactions we have shared have given me the greatest joy. Whether we're talking about fishing and sharing fish pictures, or looking at the latest fly pattern you designed, or talking about the remodeling projects we have taken on, I have treasured our conversations and hope that they will continue. I am very envious of your retirement and hope that you truly stay retired this time and only do the work you want to do, because then it's not really work. Please thank your wife for allowing the district to consume so much of your time this past year. I shall always consider you my friend.
Anyone else?
And if I could.
Yes, sir.
You know, I appreciate the kind words, and I question myself, thinking about the first time I sat over there and there were signs banging on the window, but.
There was
anyway.
one for you.
Yeah, well, not many. Not very much common sense, as I said earlier. I do think it's really important, for the district to move forward and not mire in next year. And so, and this year was this year, and it's really important for the district to move forward. And so I hope that I hope that that will be something that everybody can take away from this, and just keep on moving forward and not get stuck too far in the future or too far in the past. We've got things to do now and ideas about how to do those things. There are some things for sure that I would do over this year if I could do them over. That's been every year that I've ever had, and there are things that could have been done better. And so it was an honor to do it. I apologize for the things I didn't do as well as I could have, and I don't know how those might have turned out, but it's been, I actually did not enjoy it very much to start, and then I enjoyed it quite a bit. So it's been really interesting, and I hope I've learned a few things as well. Thanks. All right, let's keep going.
Mr. Sykes, I'd like to say that it has been a privilege. I didn't know who you were before. In fact, you and Roger talk about the old guys all the time. I never know who you guys are talking about. I Googled you when I heard of you, and you have a Wikipedia page. I think that's pretty cool, but no social media. You helped us right our ship in the way that it needed to go. And it's not easy having 5 bosses with 5 different leadership styles and 5 different requests all the time. But you did good. You never let us down. You called us out when we needed to be called out and squared things away when they needed to be squared away. I'm a little nervous, but I really believe in Andy. But when you have Rob Saxton, it's like, what else do you have? So I really appreciate your leadership and your friendship. Motivated me to go out and catch some steelhead today and figure out what bobber dogging was. So that was a great time. If you wouldn't mind posting front and center one more time, and if the board members would join me for a photograph and a certificate of appreciation to the superintendent. And Emily, if you wouldn't mind. No, we may have another Saxon, no superintendent. Any more board member reports? And we'll move into consent agenda, the motion. Yes, sir.
Before you do, yeah, I'm to 1.2 board member reports. I've had the chance over the course of the school year, and particularly in the last month, to work with the Albany Public School Foundation, Amy Addison and that group, and I've been positively surprised by a lot of things. But what a great group, what a great community organization, and I've enjoyed working with them, and would encourage members of the public, if you want to help kids and you've got some time on your hands or financial resources, it's just a great organization. Kudos to them.
Perfect. All right, moving into consent agenda, personnel licensed. Recommended motion is move to approve licensed as presented.
I'll move to approve personnel licensed as presented.
All second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Move to K2. Recommended motion is move to approve personnel classified as presented.
Move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is K3. Move to approve minutes for the regular board meeting from 4/18/22 as presented.
I move to approve minutes regular board meetings 4/18/22 as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And K4, minutes from 5/16, regular board meeting as presented.
I'll move to approve minutes 5/16, from May 16, 1922, or, yeah, 2022, regular board meeting as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Brings us to old business, policy KL. There's no questions. Recommended motion is to approve policy KL by the Policy Rewrite Committee with updates as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. And always a big appreciation to that committee. Reports. And brings us to Assistant Superintendent Lisa Harlan.
Yes, so board chair, members of the board, I'd like to bring to you just an academic update from, it's the companion to the one in the fall. It will take some of the data that you saw in the fall from the reading and math screener assessments and give you the spring updates. One of the things I should let you know is that the state testing results that are used here are not official results. Obviously, we just took them in the spring, so they're just preliminary estimates of what that looks like, and we get official scores and results both for the state average and our district ones later this summer. Okay, so this first slide is English Language Arts, and it goes K-8 and then grade 11. One of the things to note is that grade 11 is just the state test. There are no reading screeners for reading or math at the high school level. And there are no state tests for K2, so that's why you see the holes in the chart that you do. Let me walk you through kindergarten just so that you know what you're looking at, and then you'll be able to orient yourself to the rest of the graph. So in kinder, 33% of our students district-wide where we would expect them to be in English Language Arts. And in kindergarten, in the fall, that really is letter recognition, letter sound recognition, things like that. So it was at 33%. By spring, that was 60%, and that is 60% that pose no risk, right? So that are at or above grade level. So the growth there would be 27%. Go ahead.
And Lisa, just to check, that's at a different standard, right? We're not talking about the same set of expectations for kids. So it is that we're not talking about letter recognition sounds anymore. We're talking about a much more complex set of skills.
Absolutely. So all of the screeners that we use, let's say in the fall in grade 3, that's fall for grade 3. When we do it in winter, it's like grade 3.5, so third grade 5 months in. So the expectation of what you can do grows, right? And the goal obviously is to keep kids at grade level and up above, beyond. I mean, certainly to catch those up who in the fall are not where we would expect them to be in the fall. So for third grade, what you'll see is the percentage of students that took the state assessment, the district overall average rates, pass rates, and then the state pass rates. Again, this is for English Language Arts. And then you'll see a difference, a plus or minus in terms of percentage, and you'll see that for grades 3 through 11. So it gives you kind of a good comparison, certainly in grades 3 through 8, in terms of the state assessment and the grade level benchmark assessments that we give for English language arts.
So what's SBAC?
It's SBAC, but it's the Smarter Balanced Assessment. That's the state test.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the things I think is really complicated about this is, me being a ex-state person, is going down the left-hand column and seeing the percent of students that completed the test.
Yeah.
The state's given a lot of mixed messages about whether or not students need to take this test. There actually is a federal requirement that says that, is it 95?
Mm-hmm. It's 95%.
That 95% of all kids need to take the test. And
That's in order for the results to be like reliable, valid, and usable to be able to say what's the overall health of the system.
it's that if you don't have about 95% of kids take the test, the results aren't as reliable as they ought to be. And interestingly, it seems like students who are the highest performers oftentimes choose not to take the test, and students lowest performers sometimes choose not to take the test as well. And then the state of Oregon has given lots of mixed messages about whether or not it really is important to take the test or not. There was a time where if these were our results, the feds would have taken away all of our money in the state and said, you can't do this. You can't have 90% or less do this. If you do that in the state of Oregon, we're going to take away your federal money for schools. That seems to have been rescinded and isn't as big a deal anymore, but it's a big deal to me because I want to know how our kids are doing. And I just hate anything in the data that makes us question, exactly what our outcomes look like. And our outcomes aren't as high as I would want them to be when I look at this information. But I'm also stuck wondering exactly what the percentage of students who took the test means to us in that result. I love what I see here on kindergarten first and second, and I think it really is part of our MTSS system and the implementation that we have taking place there. And you will see that be difference-making as kids move forward in grades. So when those kindergartners become first graders, become second graders, and so forth, you'll start to see kids who are more likely to be readers than what we've had in the past, I believe, and you'll see those results begin to manifest themselves as students are in 5th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade.
One of the reasons why is because when we have a screener, so the state test is just in the spring. By the time you get the results, it's the end of July or August, and it's too late to say, oh my gosh, they weren't doing well. So, right? And so
It's maddening.
so that's the whole purpose behind an MTSS system that has universal screeners 3 times a year. So this was the first year in this district that middle school has had universal screeners for grades 6 through 8 in both English language arts and math. If we don't know soon enough that you have a gap and fill it, the end of the year is too late. And so I think one of the things that you'll see throughout the data, and it makes sense in terms of how we've started to implement MTSS, it was implemented earlier at the elementary, earlier at the earlier grades, and has moved up. And this is really the first year in earnest that we've had universal screeners and interventions only for English language arts in 6 through 8 ever. And so as that system continues to strengthen and to expand interventions, this will get better. But you have to start with English language arts. You have to start with data that tells you sooner than annually how kids are doing against a grade mark benchmark. And so I think that's the trend that you'll see. And when I look and see how elementary is doing in comparison, it tells me that that system is working and we need that system throughout.
So,
I also think what you measured or what you care about gets done. And I do think it is
100%.
important for the district to quickly set benchmark targets in all grades, right? And Senator Yee will be out there saying, I told you so. And I think that's appropriate, but we need to, move through the process and do it right. And I think that's what we're going to get out of that. But we need to put those targets out there so that we go to work on them.
And they have to be benchmark ones, so we have the time in the middle of the year to say, hold on, we didn't hit that November benchmark. We need to make an adjustment now so that we hit the December and the January one. Have markers that line it out. I'm gonna go through the slides because we still have math and science, and then if we have questions, or is it specific to language arts, Director Nyquist?
Well, so, thank you. I'm trying to correlate the screeners with the district pass rate
Yeah,
column, and
that's great.
I can't connect those dots.
Nope.
Can you talk just a little bit about that?
That's a great question, and I absolutely can. So the thing to know about the screeners, so we use Acadience in K6, and the screener we used is EasyCBM in 7-8. And they're specific to that grade level to say, where is it, and it's normed nationally, where is it that we would expect a 7th grader 5 months in to be in this subject area? The Smarter Balanced Assessment is not intended to do that. What the Smarter Balanced Assessment was intended to do was to be able to predict how students would do in their first year in college in this content area to get A's and B's, at least a B, I think it is. So what this tells you is, for example, in 11th grade, our district pass rate for English language arts was 43%, that you could pretty accurately predict that about 43% of your 11th graders, as they went on certainly to college, would get a B or better in their first year of English language arts in college. So it is important to know that the Smarter Balanced Assessment was kind of reverse engineered to say, if we wanted all of the kids to be successful in school in their first year of college, we heard a lot about data and information about remediation of kids in both math and writing in college. What would that need to look like? That is how that assessment was reverse engineered.
Okay, thank you.
And Interim Superintendent Saxton also has a lot of experience about that because he was at the state a few years sooner than I was when all of this originally rolled out between SBAC and Park, but I certainly had the privilege of getting into the thick of it. Is there anything you would add there?
No.
Okay. I think it's an important marker, but the thing that is often misunderstood about this assessment is that A, it should be used for student placement. It never should be. It's an autopsy. It's not a progress report. The second is that it is the grade level benchmark for that content area for all kids, and it's not that either. And so I think it's just important to put in its place.
Or in short, it's really hard.
I think
Test.
most of the population probably would not receive a 3 or 4 on the 11th grade math or English language arts. Yeah. But that was also not its purpose. And I think we've confused that as the years unfold. Okay, so mathematics, you're seeing something similar. Both, again, it's K-8. And the only reason it's 11th grade is that's the only grade. That's the grade that's tested for Smarter Balanced in high school, and we don't have any screeners, universal screeners in high school for math or English language arts. One of the things that you'll notice is that math is not as strong as English language arts, even at the elementary level, and that's because we don't have nearly the MTSS system or the interventions for math like we do for reading at the elementary. So generally, when you implement MTSS systems, you start with reading, and you start at the younger grades and you build that up, and then you build in math interventions. And the data would tell us that that's exactly what we've done, and it is. So the remedy to that is to continue on with your MTSS systems at the elementary level, add a layer of math interventions, strengthen your reading interventions at the middle school level, and then add a layer of math interventions. It will take some flexibility specifically in scheduling at the secondary, but it's certainly possible.
So is there, because we use MTSS and QTEL for reading comprehension, word comprehension. We're going to be using MTSS for math and K-3?
Yeah, well, yes, and we do some in some areas, and we're actually gonna pilot some things at the middle school level too next year. Our program assistant in math, just a shout out to Kirsten Aldridge, is amazing and brilliant. And so there are 2 things that are going to be helpful for us next year specific to math. One is it's an adoption year for curriculum, and we need it. We need a curriculum that's comprehensive, one that's aligned, K-8, and we have some alignment work that the high schools have already done in regards to math, that will continue, and also one that comes with interventions. But generally speaking for math, the interventions come around algebraic concepts, geometric concepts, calculation, place value, number fluency, things like that. So that is kind of the order of operations in terms of where we are and kind of where we need to go. Yep. And then for science, these are the grades that are tested for science. And SBAC, it's only tested, it's not tested the same as the others, and so we don't have it for all of the upper elementary, intermediate grades, or for middle school. Okay. Now, this was a lot, but frequently the question we get is, okay, how does this compare to years past, right? So what you're looking at are the district averages, the state averages, and the difference in Smarter Balanced from 2014 for all of the years that we had data, right, until now, so that you can kind of see a scope of what that looks like. It's over time. So the first is certainly English language arts, and then the second you'll see a similar one in terms of math. And again, for this year, these are our estimates of how we think the state averages will fall out, and certainly how we think our averages in the district will fall out. The state averages, generally speaking, just so you know, are dictated by 3 districts. They're the 3 biggest districts in the state, and how they do is how the average falls out, because it's just, you know, it's the heaviest guy in the boat, so it lists that way. That's generally how averages are set in the state. And then those same years, again, for Smarter Balance for math over time. Certainly from back to, 2014, there are some patterns and certainly some concerns because they're higher than we'd like them for sure. Just know when we're talking about averages at the district level, right? It's pretty hard to impact the overall district average by large percentages, same as the state. If you're going to impact that, you have to impact the sheer number that you would have to impact to grow 1%, 2%, or 3% is a lot. And so that's just something to consider when you're looking at goals that try to impact overall averages. You can do the backwards math to tell you what that would actually mean by grade level by school. Okay, so what does that mean we need to do, and then what would our priorities be as a district? The first I would say is to better align instruction, and that's K-12, so that the skills and tools that kids are learning in the elementary school are ones that they build off of in middle school and certainly in high school. We have to provide targeted interventions to skill gaps. It's not simply a matter of, you know, Johnny's behind in reading or Johnny's behind in math or below grade level, so he needs an intervention. You have to know why and specifically what the skill is, because you can fill that skill much quicker than saying, oh, we're just gonna go over second grade again, math again, or we're gonna go over, you know, fourth grade reading. That's not how reading or math works at those ages. And then be able to monitor student progress frequently. That's once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, to then adjust what the interventions are. So one of the exciting things Superintendent Saxton talked about earlier is the strategic plan, and I appreciate that, because part of that will allow us and compel us really to deeply implement MTSS systems, K-12, to implement a common set of strategies, instructional strategies and standards of practice, so we can start to get really good at this set of strategies that we know are proven to work. And then really we'll be engaged, and actually we did today, it was pretty exciting for the elementary. They were engaged in professional development for the new ELA curriculum. That was awesome to see all of these grade level teams pretty excited about that work, and do the same for math next year. One of the exciting things about the curriculum that they were looking at today for English language arts were some of the comprehension strategies that were proven strategies that were already paired with the curriculum. That they got professional development around. So alignment of things like that make a difference when teachers are implementing what it looks like in the classroom. It makes it much easier. So that's pretty exciting, and we have a lot of work to do. But if we did even just those first two things, MTSS and a common set of proven instructional strategies, that would make a difference for kids, certainly. Any questions?
I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it, the models the district has in place are the best models I know. Stay the course, stay a little bit patient, and get to a place where this becomes the focus. I mean, this is about teaching and learning and what kids are able to do when they're done here. Stay the course, stay focused on it, set up a strategic plan that has targets in it, work those targets, and we've got to have enough professional development time to make a difference in what happens. So there's lots of teaching that takes place every day in classrooms, and quite honestly, some teaching is better than others. And when you're able to have high quality teaching across the board, and when that set of teaching gives every single kid in the class access to the content in an effective way, then you start to move the dial. That's what QTEL does. You know, QTEL is quality teaching of English language, and it gives kids access to the content in a different way than just sort of approaching it willy-nilly, if you will, and that is incredibly important. And so the district is working on those things. Stay the course.
Go ahead.
Obviously, I really like this. I think we need to keep doing it. I think the things that both of you talked about are real important. I think where we're at now, it certainly isn't, big time for a big party at all, and it's unfortunate. But I think if we set goals and hold ourselves to them, and the hold ourselves to them is real important. And part of the way we do that is we report them, quarterly, and we talk about them in public, and we're reminded about them, and we're held accountable for it. I think that's really important. I think another thing that I'd ask you both about that you say is important, I agree 100%. Why aren't we making the kids take the test? Is there some reason we're not allowed to make them take the test? I mean, how can we prepare them for success if we don't even know where they are?
My answer is, like, most people won't like it, but in my opinion, it's the truth. The state used to require it and make us do it, and they went away from it. And that was a move that came through the politics of Salem, and we're no longer required to do that. I think it's a really bad idea.
So I guess my question would be, why can't we do it as a district? Is there some law that says we can't require it?
Well, so there are provisions that allow parents and students to opt out. And so there isn't a way that we could do away with those. That would still be their provision to do, for sure. One of the, and again, part of the reason we do universal screeners for reading and math are for that reason. Because the participation rates that we get for those screeners is much higher than the state test, and they're oftentimes quicker. They tend to be a little bit more staff heavy. In the earlier grades, it's one-on-one, right? That you're listening and asking questions and listening to them read, but that's part of the reason universal screeners are so helpful.
Well, one thing Roger said, and I agree with, and I think all of us do. I mean, we follow the law, right? So if we can't make them take it, that's okay. We got to follow the law. But if screeners seem to be something we can do, then maybe we need to embrace screening a little better.
Benchmark.
So I have a
Screeners and
request for
benchmark
next year.
assessment.
My request would be that each of you make a commitment to go see Acadians being delivered at an elementary school. And you
Oh,
set that up for,
Agree.
I would love to have you go see the literacy screener in action and watch what that looks like. It actually is a really fun day in my mind, because you got kids coming down, there's a quick assessment, we've got a lot of people who are working on it, and it's pretty cool to see what that looks like, and it'll give you a really good indication of how we're figuring out where kids are.
So this is a great presentation, a lot of information. I appreciate stay the course, but I got a specific question. You had a math slide that went back 6 years, okay, so it just looks to me like if I compare 18-19 to 21-22, that the 21-22 numbers are dramatically lower. And I immediately, whether it's rightly or not, I conclude that it's because of COVID and because of distance learning and all of those other restrictions. Do I have that right, or am I just jumping to the end with the numbers?
I mean, I think it's certainly a factor. I certainly think there are other factors as well. But to be able to look at 2 years worth of data and conclude like causation or a correlation, it is generally pretty sketchy, but
Okay.
certainly it had an impact.
I'm a layman who,
Right.
all I know how to do is get elected to a school board.
Right.
So
Here's what I would say, though. If you take a look all the way back to 14-15, so take 11th grade, the state average at the time was 31%, the district average was 28%, even all the way back then. And then we had some stable years, 14-15, certainly 15-16, 16-17, we had lots of stable years. In 18-19, for that same grade level, it was only 33 and 33. So over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 school years for the state moved 2 percentages, because the sheer number of students that is quite a bit. And the district went from 28 to 33, 5%, right? So it's just important to keep in mind when you're doing these overall averages, certainly this can tell you some information about the overall health of a system, but it is not going to tell you the overall health of a school or the overall health certainly of student level decisions or group level decisions.
Okay, so my fear is that kids who are in the wrong place at the wrong time with their education are going to go through life with less than because of the timing. And that may come to pass, it may not. You know more about that than I do. But, and I'm getting stay the course of doing things the best we know how, the way we've been doing it. Kids, the educational system over the last 2 years have gone through an extraordinary, challenging, difficult experience that may call for different methods to get kids back where we'd like them to be. And my biggest frustration is the lack of real-time data. As you mentioned, we do this testing and we don't know, I can't help believe there's somewhere in this country, some school district just come across this, this novel idea and they're doing things different or this or that, I don't know what, and they've moved kids up relatively quickly as a result of the changes they've made. If that were true, where would we come upon that information?
So I would tell you, one of the things that we know about interrupted learning. So we didn't have a ton of research before this in terms of distance learning or what we would call interrupted learning. But some of the data we did have actually came from natural disasters, Hurricane Katrina and other things that caused kids to miss school for months, 9 months a year at a time. Some of that research says that math, when kids are not doing it every day in the middle school and high school, will fall faster than reading. So generally, if I read at the 7th grade level and I miss some reading instruction, I don't regress. I don't not know how to read some of those same words. My vocabulary will suffer, but my reading level really doesn't. But math does, and that is what we saw in the data, for sure. So you watched math drop more drastically than reading. Those like novel ideas or what are some things that we do, that's math intervention. So some of the things that we need to do at the high school level, certainly at the middle school level, and certainly at the elementary, is to have fluid periods where students can get intervention that's not you're in a class for 8 weeks because this is the whatever intervention class. I can go in, there are 4 skill gaps that I have, I can get specific instruction in small groups for those skill gaps and still be in my class. So it's not a regret, we call that acceleration. You fill the skill gaps while you still have access to grade level content. It takes a different way of looking at scheduling and looking at the fluidity with which students go in and out of intervention, but that's what it will take. That's the novel idea, right?
And when I say, I want to be really clear, when I say stay the course, what I mean is utilize MTSS and the intervention models that we have in place. So when I say that, I mean continue on with what it is that we have in place that is really good and research-based and tells us that you get positive results that way. I think you're also talking about, are there any other models out there where people have been able to accelerate learning in ways as a result of the pandemic that would be really interesting and positive for us to consider? And I don't know the answer to the question, but I do think that there are places where we can begin to look for those things and find them. If I was gonna, make a recommendation, I would say the Association of School Curriculum Directors, ASCD, is a big organization with a whole bunch of people who are thinking about those kinds of questions. And we should begin to engage with them and see if there is anybody out there who's saying, hey, we think we have a model, because if somebody's done that, they've got their hand up trying to tell people, we need to see that hand and then be able to discern whether or not what they're saying is real or if it's some hocus pocus, because we'll see some of that. But ASCD is a really good place for that. There are a couple other organizations that I'm sure we're going to start to see reports of different kinds of successes, and we should take a hard look at those.
Thank you for the conversation. Appreciate it.
So I'm a big believer in that process is greater than outcome. And I appreciate, this year we've dropped our kindergarten, 1st grade classrooms, dropped them way down. That's going to help. It's going to be a big boost. But I also saw the year before I got on the school board, I think there was 2 graduates that got the seal for Spanish writing and language. I think there's 2. There's like 72 this year. How many was there, Lisa?
There were 42.
42.
We had 10 from West, 32 from South in languages, mostly Spanish, but also Punjabi, Mandarin. Yeah,
And that process started like 13 to 12 years ago.
it did.
And those kids went through that process, and you can't compare 3 years ago from 2 kids to 42 kids this year. And I think the district is on the exact same path with education and bringing up math and literature. I think you guys are doing a really good job. It is tough. It is extremely tough. But I, like Mr. Saxon said, to stay the course, let these processes work, because we will get the outcomes. That's what I'm hoping for.
There are 50 things that people will want us to take our eye off the ball.
It's true.
50 every day. Can't. This is what it's about. Okay.
Well, let's move to something really exciting and great. Mr. Cervantes, Executive Director Cervantes, will you talk to us about the Welcome Center?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Let me share my screen. I'm still connected.
You'd have a 50-50?
Yep, there we go. You guys can see that. You all can see that. There we go. One of my favorite subjects in the school district to discuss is the Welcome Center and the team that's there, the services they provide. The Centro de Bienvenida, or the Welcome Center, has been in existence for a number of years now, and it's actually kind of almost coming up on their 20th year here in a few years. And I wanted to share with you some of the comprehensive services that they actually share, but in particular, the services they actually provide to our largest minoritized demographic in our district, the Spanish-speaking community. As you know, or may not know, the Welcome Center used to be located in the AOS building. Because of the great growth that we've had in our AOS needs, with that school, we actually had to move the Welcome Center to Lafayette Elementary. So we're in a classroom over there now, and I'm very happy about the partnership that we were able to, that we were able to have coming there to Lafayette. So we really appreciate them taking us in and being able to be a partner there in the same building. The members of the team right now, Leonor Chavez, Roselia Francisco, Patricia Martinez, and our new interpreter coming up in July is Nancy Leon. You've seen her at one of our listening sessions over at North Albany Middle School. The areas of support that we give here are around translations, interpretations, not the same thing. Translations are written form, interpretations being of the spoken word. Vettings, for those who are unfamiliar, vettings, we have a process in which we evaluate people's bilingual skills so they can actually qualify as certified bilingual professionals. Other services that are provided there are resource referrals and advocacy for families when needed. Now, I'm going to provide you here a table that I think is very important for us to realize. There's a saying out there that says demographics are destiny. Well, if you look at the demographics of our school district, you will notice that about 22%, 22.5% of our students that attend GAP schools are Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx. It's important for us to realize, because if we go up to the pre-K programs that we look, almost half of our students in those programs are Latino as well. So our future is going to be more and more folks who are of Latino, Latina, Latinx background. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to who is actually speaking Spanish in our school district. This particular slide shows the language of origin spoken at home. 14% of our population within this district are folks who prefer to speak Spanish there. That is not an insignificant number. The demographic here in the city of Albany for Hispanic or Latino folks is almost identical to this number here. So it's pretty much on par. The second group there that you'll see is that contact 1 and contact 2, being one of the parents or guardians at home, are also prefer to speak Spanish as well. The note there at the bottom demonstrates half of Spanish as language of origin students or are in ELL or in GAP represent 96%, 97% essentially students who are in those ELL classes. So the reason I wanted to share this information, because we probably don't really talk a lot about what happens there within the Welcome Center and what they actually do. So of the Spanish translations, we have about 635 documents that were translated. Policies, district school handouts, COVID-19 specific information, disease, or specific communicable disease management, student health protocols, IEPs, report cards, HR letters. We do a lot of work, or my colleagues and team does a lot of work. 635, and that's not including the 2 individuals who we turned over this year who moved on to their positions. David Hasmin moved over to South Albany High School to be a teacher, and Maritza Fassi moved over to South Sunrise Elementary School. So I didn't even count their contributions to this translation and communications that we have with families in Spanish. Secondly, proofreading. We have a litany of very capable bilingual staff in our schools. They need work with regards to who's actually looking over their accuracy. We did almost 600 proofreadings within those teams as well. Not an insignificant amount. Again, the types of documents you see are IEPs, which are not simple documents to translate or interpret for. Those are very specific informations that go out to families. So it's not an insignificant amount of work that bilingual staff do for our district. Newsletters, report cards, and comments. And if there's one thing that we've known about, particularly our board, that they've demonstrated, they want to be able to have their information explained with what their children are learning through their report cards. So we need to make sure that that's accurate information getting out to families. So interpretations, we've had folks come in and do interpretations that are, of course, IEPs, conferences. That's a lot of work for our bilingual staff. 534 interpretation requests and work that we have been able to do. Parent-teacher calls, that is also a large quantity of work. HR has asked us to do work. Community partnerships with housing and dental services as well. Vettings, we've had 41 vettings over the year. Now, again, this is not taking into consideration that we had 2 key members who are not being able to report what their numbers were, but 41 vettings, and currently, this is not including, this is as of June 10th, by the way. So I've actually had and seen a lot of work and requests coming in since June 10th, dozens of work that actually add to these numbers here. So this is a unsolicited email that I got from Maria Hopkins, English language development teacher at Waverly Elementary School. Thank you so much for all the support you have provided for our Waverly teachers and parents. We genuinely appreciate you and the work you do. This is to the translation team that I actually was copied on, so I really appreciated that. And I didn't ask for her permission to use it, but I'm going to go ahead and do that because it is a public document. And all emails are public documents. And sorry to Maria for not informing you that I was going to do this, but I figure I'll ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But I think it's indicative of the value that the folks in the Welcome Center actually provide the school district that makes us look that much more capable, competent. And the one thing that I also, well, the final thing that I will actually note is there's a lot of disinformation around a lot of that goes out on social media, or people utilize their how they get their information. The one place that I feel comfortable and confident that I want the community to feel comfortable and confident of where they get good information is here at the school district. So anything that I have tried to inculcate within the community is to say, if you're having any questions around COVID, infections, services, resources that you need, come to our either webpage, our Facebook posts, or what have you, emails, Parent Square, to get accurate information. And thankfully, we've seen that to come to pass because we have people who are competent, capable, and willing to do the work. So I would gladly take questions if you have any. I would encourage you all to perhaps in the future go over to the Welcome Center next year and check it out and engage with the staff there. They would be welcome. They would be happy to see you be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Cervantes. And I would challenge your partner right there that I think we need some Spanish-speaking school bus drivers. I think that is when we have kids and they're moving, and I think that's a really important need to see some Spanish-speaking school bus drivers. I think that'd be excellent. Just to throw that on top of the school bus driver need.
I think it's a good point, though, in terms of diversifying staff and having staff who can communicate with kids directly, especially in important situations. I think that's key. So I appreciate that point.
All right, we'll move into bond business. Good evening, Mr. Hamilton. What do you have for us tonight?
Mr. Chair, I can actually start with this. Skip is here in large part just to field any questions that may come up. So this isn't going to be the end of month bond report. Rather, this is a recommendation to award a GMP amendment to the South Shore project. Kind of the history of the South Shore project was it was going to be an 8-classroom modular project. Through investigation of HMK and their hard work, it was determined we could actually stick build the property and have it be less expensive. All the costs were considered in evaluating that, including the cost that you're seeing right here, which look like a substantial increase, roughly $23,000 to $429,000. Those were part of the consideration in looking at how to do this project in the most cost-effective way possible. What this has us do is move the existing modulars on that property to another location on the property to facilitate the building of the new structure. In addition, we had some bond funds that were allocated towards projects to re-side, to re-roof, and do things to those existing modulars. We're able to use those funds in addition to the other ESSER funds that have been allocated for this project in order to soften the blow. We still come out ahead in making this move and stick building the project. So what this amounts to is a big increase, but it has been something that we've planned and budgeted for as we've considered the project as a whole.
Mr. Chairman, I move to award the CMJ, is it GC, GMP Amendment 1 for summer 2022 modular project at South Shore Elementary.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you.
Great work.
It'll be ready tomorrow?
Yeah.
Day after.
Okay, great.
We have some new policy to review under Q1, O1. And that is just, it's new business. If you have any feedback, please let us know. And then O2 brings us to frontline memorandum. Executive Director Huskova?
Do you want to say anything to that, Rob?
I guess what I would say is that the district has begun this year working on implementation of Frontline. It's a software program that helps with HR. We have found it to be very helpful. It is the model that it seems that most of the state is moving toward. I know that it's something I've used in places where I worked in the past, and the district had this coming on before I ever took a look at it. This is a 3-year contract. The first year is about $125,000 to purchase additional modules. I do think it gives us the opportunity to be more effective, keep better track of where we are in our HR and budgeting systems at the same time, and even reduce the number of staff that we need to a certain extent within HR once we become effective at using this. And so I think there's a long-term upside to it. And I don't know if you have anything to add, but that would be what I would say in recommendation to approve.
We currently have several of the modules of Frontline that started with Randy Larry. One we've had for a little while, the 2 we added last spring. So as I moved into the position and gave Randy a call about what was also your vision of the bigger picture, and it was to continue to really purchase the whole management system, so all the pieces are integrated for human resources. They're not currently integrated. We have entry that we do in more than one location because of the lack of integration. This rounds out the whole management system for HR. It's an annual cost. It's not a total cost, but wanted to bring it to you to let you know where we're going. And total over the 3 years, it's more than $150,000, but the additional modules are not, the components are not.
So my only question here is, it says you've reviewed the request with incoming superintendent Andy Gardner, who has experience with it, but doesn't say he's behind it.
I can tell you that I've checked with Superintendent Gardner, and he is, we did not move this forward until he said yes. I think
Okay,
we should move
that's just
I
a
would
crucial,
not- I
that's just a
would-
crucial part.
Would not put his name down unless that was part of it, but yes, I understand. Yes. A good technical piece. Thank you there.
It's just like,
So this is brought to us as new business. Would anyone be opposed to passing this tonight, or would they like to see it come back?
we have to wait, don't we?
I don't think that we do have to, and I actually really like the idea of doing it tonight because of the budgetary implications past July 1.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the frontline purchases presented.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, gentlemen.
I have under Q here, and once you get past future agenda items.
Okay. Any future agenda items? Any other business?
Go ahead.
We do have meal pricing on Q1, right? Okay. Okay, sorry.
So Superintendent Saxon, I too want to thank you. I want to thank you mostly for taking this job for the last year. And question on a lot of people's mind is why? And I think you took this job because you wanted to make a difference and because you were invested in this community from the time you'd spent here as a teacher. Certainly, you're leaving this district better than you found it. And amongst the lessons that we should take away from your time here, the lesson, and you said it earlier, you get 50 chances every day to take your eye off the ball. And that going forward, giving kids, having been in COVID and distant learning and the needs for kids in schools and the community being what they are, that we should take away from your time here, that our commitment to not take our eye off the ball going forward. And that it's about, I think, Superintendent Saxton, it's about education of kids so they have a brighter future through the opportunity that's provided by this school district. And I think, for me at least, where we are today has wildly exceeded the goals and expectations that I had hoped for when you got here. And I just, on behalf of the community, want to convey our gratitude for your time here. And we're very grateful, and don't be a stranger.
Thank you. It's more than I deserve for sure, but thank you. Appreciate it very much. My honor, actually. Thank you.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, I'll thank Director Nyquist for allowing me to deflate the room after that nice speech. So here we are coming 2 years off of the federal free lunch program. This is our first year in a little while to establish pricing. It's also, of course, coinciding with the new contract that we have for our food service provider. Based on the accepted price of that, district leadership team has sat down and reviewed the meal pricing. And this particular item is just information only. It's to share with the board, but the meal pricing is as shown in the board packet.
So I got a couple questions. So pre-COVID, so people are still going to fill out free and reduced lunch, right? And with that, there was a program called Community Rating. Our whole school at Central we never paid for lunch. Mm-hmm. Does that continue?
Yeah, and I believe that's the CEP program, and in fact,
okay.
we have 9 to 11 schools that are currently eligible for that. That's correct.
Okay, well, that's good.
So we don't see free lunch next year.
Outside the CEP program, those reimbursements that we would see, correct.
Okay.
And there's still children in different schools that will get free lunch. I mean, and that percentage is pretty high. I mean, any idea what those percentages are?
So we take those percentages based on our direct certification, and they range, probably the lowest is about 18 to 20%. That's probably Oak Grove or Nays, and the highest is in the 80s. So I would say, just so you know, the majority of our elementary schools are Title I schools and are part of CEP, which is the community eligibility provision. The district average is about 50. So about half of our kids would qualify for free or reduced lunch, and about half don't.
Okay.
As a district average. It's higher at the elementary, much higher.
What I liked over the last few years that we haven't had to do, I mean, we got it the first year with parents upset about collections or their kid got sent to the end of the line. Let's do a good job. Let's work on our customer service. Thank you. Any further information, gentlemen? I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned.